It's our goal to provide as much information as possible so that residents in Troy can make an informed decision when voting on November 8th. During the dozens of community conversations, meetings, PTO events, virtual presentations, and emails we've answered the past couple of months, a handful of questions have arisen as the most frequently asked. These are good questions, so we thought we'd address them all at once. First, people want to know how much this will cost them. It's a very good question, and there's an easy formula to figure it out. Take out your tax bill, which you can also find online at the city website. Look at the taxable value of your home. Take the taxable value, divide by 1,000, and multiply by 2. If you've lived in your home a long time, you may be surprised to find out that the bond would cost less than the average dollar a day because your taxable value has been capped. Next, people want to know why we can't spend federal stimulus money or COVID dollars on these projects. And they want to know where any COVID money the district received went. We received $33 million in COVID funding, but it came with some very specific strings attached. COVID funding was specifically earmarked for pandemic-related issues, including supplies like PPE, testing, and mitigation efforts. Other money was specifically mandated for any learning loss, especially with at-risk students. Though some targeted high-need urban districts received additional funding to upgrade buildings, we did not qualify for those grants. There is no additional federal stimulus money for items included in the bond proposal for districts like Troy. The third question we get frequently has to do with the scope of some of the projects. People want to know why we need a new academic wing at Athens High School. Couldn't we just remodel what is there now? Great question. When the Facilities Review Committee was looking at Athens, they explored doing exactly that. But the way that building was built, it would cost nearly $90 million to fix the foundational issues at Athens and renovate it to address the way students learn best today. Building a new academic wing is estimated to cost about $114 million. The second part of the equation is the limitations that come with the way that Athens was originally designed. While we could make some of the needed changes, the layout of the building and the lack of any natural light meant we couldn't completely retrofit Athens to include the flexible classrooms and elements that were identified as important. The third element is that gutting Athens for a remodel meant that we would have to relocate those students somewhere else. We couldn't do the work with students in the building, and that would involve additional costs to rent space outside the district and disrupt the learning environment for students for a significant period of time. The FRC determined that it didn't make sense, cost-wise, to spend that much money to get far less than it could with a new academic wing. The return on investment just wasn't there. And finally, we get lots of questions about the schedule for improvements in the bond. Understandably, people want to know what's happening first and when they could expect to see changes in their schools. While we won't have a final schedule until after the voters decide, there are a few important things I can tell you. The bonds are sold in 3 series. Every school will see some upgrades in the first series of the bond, whether that is infrastructure updates, flexible furniture, new ADA accessible playgrounds, or bathroom remodels. In terms of large construction plans, a new Smith Middle School would be one of the first large-scale projects we would undertake. And that is simply because the old Smith Middle School would be needed to temporarily house students as we work on major improvements to other middle schools. Beginning design and construction at Athens would also take place fairly soon in the bond process, as both those buildings are older and the scope of those projects will take time to complete. Remember, the design process for all projects will not begin until after voters approve the bond proposal, so the renderings you see won't necessarily reflect what the final projects will look like. We are excited to work with our community on next steps should the proposal pass. These are your schools and your choice on November 8th. If you have questions about the 2022 bond, please reach out to bond2022@troy.k12.mi.us.